Good day, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the 46th DOST-Fnri Seminar Series Virtual Edition. We hope that you have learned so much from yesterday's plenary session and are looking forward to the different technical sessions that we have in store for everyone. To all the participants watching now, we would like to remind you that the open forum will commence right after the last presenter. Please do click on the Q&A button on the chat box so that your question will be registered. Also, the certificates for the 46 FNRI series will be only available once you have completed the feedback form and the post test. So, this morning, we have a set of interesting research studies that repurpose existing nutrition interventions in improving the nutritional status of vulnerable populations as as well as use innovative products in supporting healthy aging. Let me first introduce our three resource speakers for this morning's technical session. Our first speaker for today is Ms. Maria Julia Gubat, a senior science research specialist at the Life Stage Nutrition section of DOST-Fnri. She has received her Bachelor of Science in Nutrition degree at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and pursued her Master in Science in Nutrition and Health at the Wageningen University and Research Center, the Netherlands. Currently, she is completing her PhD studies in nutrition at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Ms. Gubat has been actively involved in research studies on the gut microbiota of Filipino children and adults, as well as in other nutrition-related areas like satiety, eating behavior, and dietary reference intakes. She has authored and co-authored several publications in peer-reviewed journals and passionately shares her research work in various international and national conferences as well. For this session, Ms. Gubat will be discussing her findings on the gut microbiota of normal weight and overweight and obese Filipino adults. Our second speaker is Mr. Robbie Carlutan, a Science Research Specialist 1 at the Life Stage Nutrition section of DOST-Fnri. He received his Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics degree at the University of Santo Tomas, Manila, and ranked 4th place in the 2009 Nutritionist Dietitian Licensure Examination. He completed his Master in Science in Nutrition and Health with specialization on Public Health and Epidemiology at the Wageningen University and Research Center, the Netherlands. As a researcher, Mr. Tan has been actively involved in studies related to healthy aging and nutrition tool development like the Pinggan Pinoy and the Nutritional Guidelines for Filipinos to 2012. He has authored and co-authored several publications in peer-reviewed journals, handbooks, and nutrition information materials, and is consistently invited as panelist and research speaker in various local and international engagements. Mr. Tan will be sharing his research work titled Fit for Senior Development of Physical Activity Guide for Older Filipino. The last speaker for technical session 1 is Ms. Julieta Dorado, who is currently a supervising science research specialist in the Nutrition Intervention, Evaluation, and Policy section of DOST-Fnri. She is a graduate of Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Development Communication from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She has completed units towards Doctor in Social Development from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Ms. Dorado has acted as project or study leader and team member in various research on community-based nutrition intervention for maternal and young children, evaluation of food and nutrition programs, policy advocacy and communication, and nutrition education. She has authored and co-authored publications on nutrition intervention and education and has served as research person and speaker in international and national conferences in food and nutrition and the social aspects of nutrition. Ms. Dorado will be presenting her study on malnutrition alleviation and health restoration through after-war intervention. Without further ado, here is our first speaker for the technical session 1, Ms. Maria Julia G. Guban.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Julia Gubat, and I'm going to present to you our study on the gut microbiota profile of normal weight and overweight obese Filipino adults. Okay. In the recent years, there has been a growing interest in studying the gut microbiota profile of humans and characterizing them. And we know now that the human gastrointestinal tract is housed to the most abundant and complex ecosystem of 100 quintillion bacterial species weighing approximately 1.5 kilograms. And this ecosystem of microorganisms is collectively known as the gut microbiota, and the genes they encode is known as the gut microbiome. There are several factors that influence the gut microbiota. Among the identified factors are the mode of delivery, whether a baby has been delivered by vaginal delivery or by cesarean delivery. Also, the mode of feeding, whether a baby has been breastfed or bottle fed, diet, exercise, and other personal habits, the presence of disease, for example, intestinal inflammation, aging, medications, especially antibiotics and acid suppressants, as well as geography. In several investigations, two groups of bacterial species are found to be dominant in the human gut. These are the Bacteroidetes and the Firmicutes. There's also evidence pointing to obesity as a result of alterations in the body's regulation of energy intake, and also investigations in animal models as well as in humans suggest that the gut microbiota is affected by the nutrient acquisition and energy regulation as an effect of altered weight or nutritional status. There are studies pointing to the differences in the gut microbial composition between lean obese humans and animals. In this slide, a study published in Nature show that the relative abundance of Bacteroidetes is decreased with obesity while Firmicutes is increased. And with weight loss in the obese group, the Bacteroidetes has been observed to increase and the Firmicutes has relatively decreased. This particular observation correlated with the percentage of lost weight and not with the changes in dietary caloric intake. Other studies also explored the association between diet and gut microbiota, and findings are in general agreement that the composition of the gut microbiota is influenced by the type of diet, particularly by the major nutrient in the diet. Okay. Most of the studies on the gut microbiota were performed mostly in Western populations, and information on the human gut microbiota in Asian population, particularly in Filipino population, remains largely uninvestigated. Therefore, this study aimed to characterize the gut microbiota profile of selected normal weight and overweight and obese Filipino adults. Essentially, we wanted to know what bacterial microorganisms are in their gut, how abundant are they, and how similar or different are the gut microbiota of these two groups of population with different nutritional status. And also we wanted to see the similarities and differences in their diets. We recruited participants from different offices in the DOST compound. Recruitment was done through online promotion and posting of sign-up sheets in different buildings inside the DOST compound. And those who signed up, their interest were scheduled for an orientation where we discussed the study protocol and the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the study. Afterwards, those who submitted signed informed consent were again scheduled for anthropometric and clinical assessment conducted by our team's registered nutritionist dietitians and registered gastroenterologists. Eligible participants were those who were 19 to 49 years old, did not have antibiotic and probiotic intake and hospitalization in the past 2 months, did not undergo deworming treatment in the past 6 months, were not diagnosed with gastrointestinal disorder, diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular disease, pulmonary disease, and cancer. Among females, we included only those who were not pregnant and not lactating. We collected dietary data among these participants using a 125-item semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire, and we characterized their gut microbiota using 16S rRNA sequencing. We had a total of 46 participants in the normal weight group and 20 participants in the overweight and obese group. For the gut microbiota analysis, we extracted genomic DNA from the stool samples of our study participants, and this subsequently underwent PCR amplification. Afterwards, quality control was conducted, and bacterial species were clustered into operational taxonomic units or OTUs, and these OTUs were analyzed primarily for the assessment or determination of the relative abundance of bacterial species and their diversity. Okay. Our sequencing revealed a total of 204 bacterial genera and 15 different phyla in the gut microbiota of these study participants, and we constructed a phylogenetic tree for the top 15 abundant phyla. Overall, we have seen that the gut microbiota of our study participants were dominated by bacterial species belonging to the Firmicutes, Bacteroidetes, Actinobacteria, and Proteobacteria phyla. There were also species from other phyla, but these were notably low, and therefore we only considered this top phyla. Okay, so between groups, we have noted that there is a higher relative abundance of Firmicutes and a lower relative abundance of Bacteroidetes in the overweight and obese group as compared to the normal weight group. We have also noted that there is a higher alpha diversity in the normal weight group. What does this mean? This means that there are more bacterial species in the gut microbiota of our normal weight study participants. Okay. In terms of dietary intake, we noted no significant differences in the average energy intake per day between the two groups of our study participants. However, it can be seen in the graph that both of the groups had energy intakes per day that are lower than the recommended energy intake stipulated in the PDRI. In terms of macronutrient intakes, we also did not see significant differences in the macronutrient intakes and contribution to daily energy intake between groups. And for both groups, their macronutrient intakes are within the acceptable macronutrient distribution range. There are several studies pointing to the potential role of dietary fiber in gut microbiota as well as in obesity. So we also looked into the differences in the average dietary fiber intakes for both groups. And we have seen that both groups did not have a dietary intake that meets the recommended intake per day in the PDRI. And most of the dietary fiber consumption for both groups comes from the intake of rice, cereals, fruits, meat, and alternatives and vegetables. Okay. So in conclusion, we have seen that the gut microbiota profile of our study participants, that is in the normal weight and overweight obese Filipino adults, had a dominance of bacterial species from Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes phyla. Did their gut microbiota differ? Yes, we noted that the relative abundance of Firmicutes is higher than in the overweight and obese group, and bacteroidetes is lower in this group. However, there is a higher alpha diversity in the normal weight group. Their diets did not differ significantly, and their energy intakes both are lower than the recommended as intakes in the PDRI. This is also true for their dietary fiber intakes. So it is well established that obesity is influenced by several factors. Among this is the genetics, diet, lifestyle, and environment. Our observations in this present study corroborate with earlier findings that the proportional abundance of bacterial gut microorganisms are altered by obesity, and consistent with results from animal studies as well as in other human studies, the common gut microbiota changes in obese subjects seem to be linked to higher Firmicutes to bacteroidetes ratio and a lower gut microbial diversity. It's still not clear as to yet why obese people have more Firmicutes. Probably the vast diversity within this particular phylum has diverse metabolic capabilities that may contribute to a more efficient energy extraction from the organic matter in the diet. Clearly, there is a need for additional work to better clarify this potential mechanism, because in other studies, it has also been noted that the results are different. The ratio of Firmicutes to bacteroidetes was reportedly lower in obese and overweight than the lean volunteers in one study, while in another, it was reported that the observed proportion of bacteroidetes did not differ between the obese and non-obese individuals. So this particular aspect remains inconclusive, and more studies are needed to elucidate this mechanism. Diet is one of the most important factors in obesity, and it has been repeatedly shown to have a profound link to gut microbiota. In our study, however, we did not observe significant differences in the dietary intakes of our normal weight and overweight and obese groups, although we did note differences in their gut microbial composition and diversity. We obtained dietary information using a food frequency questionnaire, and it is possible that study participants underreported their intakes, and recall bias could have also been possible. This is one limitation in the collection of dietary information, as also reported in other studies. It has been reported in previous investigations that underreporters tend to be those with higher BMI, and that FFQ has been observed to be prone to BMI-related underreporting. While we have not seen significant differences in the diet between the two groups in the present study, which could potentially explain the differences in the Firmicutes to bacteroidetes ratio and alpha diversity, several studies suggest that dietary intervention could ameliorate obesity by altering gut microbiota profile. And this is shown in this table. The composition and functionality of the gut microbiota has been shown to be largely defined by long-term diet, but a number of studies already reported that changes are also apparent in response to short-term dietary manipulations. Some studies show that within 2 days after the start of the dietary intervention, the gut microbiota responded and exerted changes in composition. Therefore, taken together with our observations, the evidence suggests that gut microbiota modification through dietary intervention is promising in terms of obesity amelioration. We are only beginning to understand the human gut microbiota, especially in our population, and there is still so much unknown, especially with the current changes in the diets. This is an exciting field of research, as other scientists noted a number of potential applications. In Europe, they have already reported the success of the fecal microbiome transplantation. But studies are needed both to better understand the causal relationship between the gut microbiota of varied composition and the propensity to be obese or lean, and to whether modulating the gut microbiota would help reduce obesity. Therefore, we look forward to a more complete profiling of the Filipino gut microbiota, not only with our team but also in other researchers in the Philippines, so that we can better understand the different taxa that could be useful both for nutritional and medical applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gubat, for the highly informative presentation about the gut microbiota's significant impact on human health. Before we start the next presentation, we would like to thank the viewers for attending this session. Currently, we have a total of 671 participants. Thank you very much. Now, may we now call on our second speaker, Mr. Robbie Carlatan.
Good morning to all. Together with my co-researchers, I am pleased to share with you our project on the development of physical activity guide for older Filipinos. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the following people for their invaluable contribution for the project. Professor Hercules Calianta, Ms. R.G. Cerquinia, Ms. Sarah Malto, and all the study participants. In the previous years, we have exerted our nutrition and health effort in addressing maternal and child health and non-communicable diseases among adults. While this population group needed the focus and attention, through time, a more life course perspective is being embraced in the field of health and nutrition. And FNRI assures that in nutrition, no population group is left behind. Hence, we're engaging on research on nutrition and aging to deliver the needs of our older population. Currently, 8.2% of the Filipino population is comprised of senior citizens aged 60 years and above. And Philippines is beginning to age. For a society that can be classified as aging, at least 14% of the population should be senior citizen. In our country, we're expected to reach 14% of the population in 2030 or 2035, and that is around 10 to 15 years from now. As we age, physiologic changes are inevitable. This affects various body systems. In terms of nervous system, older people experience memory problem, depressed mood, reduced senses such as smell, taste, and touch. They also experience reduced saliva excretion, changes in dental structure, difficulty in swallowing, blunted appetite and thirst regulation, reduced nutrient absorption, and slower peristalsis. All these contribute to poor nutrition and health. Then, I want to highlight this particular physiologic change, which is muscle loss and weakness and functional decline due to change in body composition. As you can see, one of the changes is the shift of body composition from a younger age of 20 years old up to 80 years old. So for 20 years old, around half of our body is composed of muscle. And you can see the decline by the age of 50, and it will continuously decline from 60 onwards. However, for the fat, there's a drastic shift from almost 20% into 35%. As you can see, there are two side-by-side images. On the outside, they seem identical, but the body composition differs with visible difference in muscle mass. This illustrates the physiologic change in body composition among older adults. An older adult may have an ideal or stable weight, but the changes inside may happen and go unnoticed. Hence, sarcopenia comes into the picture. It is a syndrome characterized by progressive and generalized loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength, and it is strictly correlated with physical disability, poor quality of life, or even death. Risk factors for sarcopenia includes age, gender, and level of physical activity. This is one of the common diagnostic criteria for sarcopenia, developed by Cruz-Gentolf et al. So for a person to classify as sarcopenic, there should be a decreased muscle mass, muscle strength, and physical performance. I want to share with you this interesting study conducted by the group of Grown from Maastricht University. So it says the postprandial protein handling, you are what you just ate. They want to determine the postprandial protein handling ranging from dietary protein digestion, amino acid absorption, uptake of the amino acid, and its conversion into muscle. They use an amino acid tracer to see on how the amino acid goes through the body through a 5-hour postprandial period. In conclusion, ingestion of a single meal of amino acid, around 50% of it goes through the circulation, thereby improving the whole body and leg protein balance. And only 20% of it is stimulated into muscle protein synthesis rate, providing a precursor to the development of new muscle. So basically, if you have eaten your breakfast, after 5 hours, the protein that you consume, around 10 to 20% of it turns into a new muscle. However, the study was conducted among 20-year-old population. For older people, they are experiencing anabolic resistance. This means that the muscle mass of elderly couldn't respond appropriately to anabolic stimuli such as amino acid. You can see the chart here that the younger group, as shown with the lighter line, has a higher peak as compared to the elderly, which has a darker line. And looking on the muscle protein breakdown, it doesn't differ between the group. So we can say that the response to anabolic stimuli is what hurdles the protein uptake of older population. This is a slide that shows you the effect of aerobic exercises in terms of sarcopenia. As we know, along with diet, it's important to perform physical activity or exercise. And they found out that aerobic exercise contributes to positive results using various indicators. Same with resistance training exercise. Resistance training exercise means the use of weights or resistance to work on the muscle. According to the World Health Organization, older adults should do the following throughout the week: at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity, at least 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity, an equivalent combination of moderate and vigorous intensity physical activity. And as presented earlier, prolonged resistance type exercise training represents an effective strategy to improve strength and physical performance in frail older people. Along with diet supplementation, it allows muscle mass gain during exercise among frail older people. However, most of the resistance training require sophisticated equipment. This underscored the importance of developing exercise guide for older Filipino in our country. For the methods, we started with a needs assessment. A 3-session of focus group discussion were conducted in Metro Manila. Specific areas are in Barangay 5, Las Piñas, Barangay Upper Bikutan, Taguig, and Mandaluyong City. The overall aim of this is to identify motivation and barrier in performing physical activity. We asked them, what is physical activity and exercise for you? Physical activity and exercise is an action that involves movement of the whole body from head to foot. They said it is a part of their usual daily activities related to household chores and livelihood undertakings. And they also mentioned that physical activity and exercise has the same concept. Next, we asked what are the reasons for doing physical activity or for exercising. They mentioned that it is to prevent health problems. Further, the realization of maturing age and influence from peers or former profession. Furthermore, we want to understand what are the reasons for not exercising or doing physical activity. They mentioned lack of time and access to facilities, and their existing health status may be due to an accident or fall, which limits their movement. Also, they need to attend to sick spouse. And lastly, is they feel embarrassed or afraid to do fast exercises as others may laugh. And they find it difficult to follow fast exercises or dance as these are mostly targeted to the younger generation or younger age. And then we went to the development of the physical activity guide. The development phase started with a consultation with an expert to finalize the objective and identify appropriate set of exercises for older person. Then senior citizens from Barangay Upper Bikutan were gathered for medical screening, and this is in preparation for the pilot testing. Qualified participants were asked to join the pilot testing of different exercises, which is led by an instructor, and after which feedback from the participants were gathered after every session. The overall aim of the physical activity guide is to improve and sustain functional independence to perform day-to-day tasks. The guide utilizes the functional system of training with the following features. It uses body weight and small load. It develops strength, coordination between muscle groups, produces competencies in balance, and day-to-day tasks such as walking, pulling, pushing, lifting. And also, we want to ensure that there's a minimal need for the use of equipment. All this aims to contribute to the strength, balance, flexibility, and coordination of older people. These are needed for them to perform basic activities of daily living. And here, it shows you the feature of the exercise guide. It has a total of 2 sets of exercises with 10 types of routine. It is suggested to perform the routine around between 8 to 10 repetitions, to be done twice. Suggested to perform it twice or thrice a week, or even more. And perform the first part of the exercises for at least 3 weeks before proceeding to the next. This can be used by instructors in the community or barangay for their weekly exercise activity as an option for the senior citizen group or individual. While exercise or physical activity is very important, it is still necessary to take precaution in doing so, and the older people should seek medical advice they want to perform as they know their extent of capacity and should not exert too much effort that which may be harmful to them. Here is an example of the exercises from part 1. And here are example for part 2. For better appreciation, we did a step-by-step guide on how to perform the exercise, and this is directed to the instructor so they can perform it for the senior citizen. And for a better appreciation, I will be showing you sample exercise videos. And if you have a conducive place, you can follow the exercises as well. So first, we have the standing reverse act. This exercise contributes to the endurance, flexibility, and strength. It improves the overall endurance, coordination, and range of motion of older people. It strengthens and stabilizes the core, the abdomen, and for the next, we have the air walking. This is an exercise. It can help improve balance and coordination. Good balance can help prevent injuries caused by trips and fall. It can help you walk safely, jog, and even dance. For the third video, this is still in level 1. This is body squat. It improves strength and increases the flexibility of your hip, knee, calf, and glutes. It is important when you're standing up the chair or getting out of the bed or toilet seat. For the And now we have the squat with presses. As you can see, you can use bottled water in doing this. It improves strength, endurance, and again for the hips. This is very helpful when you lift your grandchildren into your chest. This exercise is bent over alternating arm rows with trunk twist. This increases trunk rotation, flexibility, and range of motion, making daily tasks easier. It strengthens the arm, shoulder, and back. It improves posture and core strength. Then we have stork stand with shin touches by opposite hand. This improves, again, balance and strength, and particularly the strength for the hamstring. This is very important if the older person has a difficulty in walking, going up or down the stairs. And for the last video, we have the single leg side swing with arm swing. This is very important in coordination, balance, as coordination is very important for older person in doing multitasking. Now I've showed you sample exercise video. Then we proceed to doing the pilot testing. and gather their feedback. Most of them find it very enjoyable, while they find some exercises very difficult to perform. However, when guided by the instructor, they were able to perform it better. Overall, we receive a very positive feedback in terms of their enjoyment in doing exercises, willingness to do it again, and willingness to do it at home. Here are sample photos of us conducting the pilot testing in Barangay Upper Bikutan. In summary, along with diet, exercise or physical activity is very important among older persons. This will help them counteract the physiologic effect of aging in the loss of muscle mass and strength. With the developed physical activity guide, older persons may perform this in group or in the community or alone at their own pace without the need for sophisticated equipment. The physical activity guide intends to contribute to the overall functionality so they can perform their day-to-day tasks. The participants found the exercise enjoyable yet challenging. However, it is still recommended to do a feasibility study in the community for this physical activity guide. Furthermore, it is important to conduct an intervention of nutrition and physical activity to see the effect in the improvement of muscle mass and strength of older people. With that, thank you for listening. And if you're interested in the topic of nutrition and aging, feel free to reach us with the email address below. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for sharing to our viewers that we now have a physical activity guide specially created for older persons' use. Now, please welcome our last speaker for this morning's technical session, Ms. Julieta Dorado.
Good morning, everyone out there. I'm Julie Dorado, and my task today is to share with you our intervention study in Marawi. So this is the malnutrition, alleviation, and health restoration through after-war interventions, which we dub simply as Tabang Marawi or Help Marawi. This project or intervention is actually a program or project which we did to do a research and at the same time to help the people of Marawi in the form of our food and nutrition technologies. The current situation of children continuously poses as a social development concern, particularly the problem of malnutrition among 0 to 5 years old. This has been persistent through the years. In the Philippines, among children under 5 years old, 2 out of 10 are underweight, and 3 out of 10 have stunted growth, and that is based on our National Nutrition Survey. This matter becomes worse in the event of both natural and man-made emergencies and disasters like typhoons, earthquakes, and armed conflicts, where the most vulnerable population groups affected in times of these disasters are the infants and young children, the older persons and women, persons with physical and psychological challenges. So basically, our study is on children. The study aimed to contribute in improving the nutritional situation of the IDPs or Bakwits and households with young children through food and nutrition interventions during the recovery phase of a man-made disaster. Specifically, We assess the nutritional status of children 6 to 35 months old before and after 120-day intervention, which is composed of complementary feeding and nutrition education. Second, we determine the programs and services available in the temporary shelters and community. And third, we explore the experiences and coping of IDPs and households with young children during disaster situation. The Tabang Marawi Nutrition Intervention Strategy was employed in the study with a goal of maintaining or improving the nutritional status of young children affected by the Marawi seeds. You can see in this slide the conceptual framework of the Tabang Marawi project. The nutrition intervention strategy is a combination of 120-day complementary feeding of the FNRI DOST developed food technologies which are being produced in the regions, and the nutrition education for the mothers and caregivers. So at the end of the complementary feeding and nutrition education, it is assumed that there will be increased weight and or maintaining the nutritional status of these children. In the case of the second component, which is the nutrition education, the participation of these mothers or caregivers in the nutrition education sessions can improve their knowledge on food, health, and nutrition. And that is, when translated in terms of practice, will contribute to the improvement of the nutritional status of these children. Now, for our study sites, so we went to Mindanao, particularly in Lanao del Sur, and in the city of Marawi. For our project activity, we have the coordination, capacity building, the data collection for the research component, the implementation and monitoring of the intervention, the data collection at end line, and we did the data analysis. So let us look at the coordination. For the coordination, of course, we met first with the Task Force Bangon Marawi, which is based in Iligan City. We met with the LGU Lanao del Sur and the LGU, or Local Government Unit of Marawi City, to explain about the DOST program or project in the area. With the Task Force Bangon Marawi, we tried to secure the assurance of security for the research that we will be doing. And then we met with the adapters of the DOST FNRI complementary food production facilities. For this, as I have said earlier, the complementary foods that were given to these children in Marawi were the products of the DOST assisted complementary food production facilities. So these are the Sultan Kudarat State University, CFPF, the University of Science and Technology of the Southern Philippines, or USTP, in Cagayan de Oro, the Tungawan Complementary Food Processing or Production Facility in Zamboanga, Sibugay, and there is another in Osamis City. And then after that, we were able to secure their support for the intervention. We went to the site visits of the temporary shelters in Marawi City, which are our project sites. So these are the project research areas. We were in Sagunsungan temporary shelters. So these shelters are located in the hilly part of Marawi City. So we were in Area 3, Area 2, Area 4, and Area 6 of Sagonsungan Temporary Shelters, and also to Buadi Itowa Temporary Shelters and the Barangay Sagonsungan Host Community. Now, we start with the capacity building of the parent leaders in these project sites that I have mentioned, because the intervention was implemented through the people of Marawi themselves. Like, we had this 2-day training on program implementation among the parent leaders and program implementers in Sagonsungan temporary shelters, where they were taught on how to implement the complementary feeding and nutrition education among the people in the area. So you can see here that the modules on this capacity building include how to implement the intervention and modules on nutrition modules which are focused on basic nutrition, breastfeeding and complementary feeding, vegetable gardening, safe food handling, and safe pregnancy. So for our research participants, we have the Bakwit households with infants and young children 6 to 35 months old. So it included both the normal and the underweight children, and then their mothers or caregivers, and the parent leaders and citizen volunteers. Because at the time of the study, there were no community workers in the area. So there were no barangay health workers and barangay nutrition scholars. So we recruited these parent leaders. Now for the next activity, now is the research component of the project, wherein we have the baseline data collection, and we took the weight and height, length of children participants. We had a 24-hour food recall of children participants by their mothers. We conducted interviews and focus group discussions among mothers or caregivers to respond to our other objectives, and the key informant interviews among the program implementers. Now, the program or the project has been implemented and regularly monitored, and this is a 120-day intervention using the DOST-Fnri developed complementary foods. And the intervention started in July 21 and it ended in November 18, 2018. Now, for the nutrition education among mothers and caregivers, they were facilitated by trained local field researchers using the DOST-Fnri developed modules. So we have two field researchers who are Muslim ladies who were immersed in the area for the 4 months that we were there. The FNRI DOST staff visited and regularly monitored the intervention. Now, we did the end line data collection after the 4 months intervention. Again, we take the weight and height, length of these children participants. We did a 24-hour food recall of children, and we had interviews among mothers and caregivers. Now, for our data analysis, we use Stata software for data processing and analysis. We use frequencies, percentages, means, mean values, paired t-test, and chi-square test of independence. We use the World Health Organization Anthroplas to determine the nutritional status. So moving on to the results of the study, for the respondent characteristics, they were mostly mothers. Those we interviewed were mostly mothers. A few include fathers, grandmothers, and aunt. The mean age was 30 years old, and most were either college, undergraduate, or finished vocational courses. In terms of household information, they belong to either a nuclear or extended household with an average of 8 members. The occupation of the household head was either business related, which is basically a sari-sari store owner, and transportation related, like tricycle driver. In terms of the child profile, we had a 225 infants and young children who participated in the intervention. The mean age of children was 20 months, distributed as follows. So for the age range of 6 to 11 months, 18.92%, 12 to 24 months, 38.75%, and 25 to 35 months, 42.34%. So there were more males than females. Now, for the nutritional status of the children after 120-day complementary feeding, more children remain to have normal nutritional status after the complementary feeding. So that is between baseline and end line. And as I have said, all children within this age range, regardless of their nutritional status, were included in the study. The weight and height of infants and young children increased significantly. So we tried to ask the mothers what they can say about the complementary foods and the feeding that were given to their children. So most children like the rice mungo curls. 9 out of 10 respondents said that complementary foods provided the needs of their children because they liked and consumed all the complementary foods that were given to them daily. They became healthy and energetic. They had extra source of foods, and the complementary foods were nutritious. So those are the perceptions or reactions, opinions of the mothers and caregivers. Now, the dietary intake of infants and children shows that the mean calorie intake increased after the 120-day complementary feeding, except for fats and vitamin C. The mean energy, protein, and carbohydrate intakes of children significantly increased from baseline to end line. And there was an increase in the number of children with adequate energy and nutrient intakes from baseline to end line of the study, except for iron intake. Now, with regards to the knowledge on food and nutrition and health of mothers and caregivers, because they attended nutrition education sessions, so we noted that there was a high percentage among attendance among these mothers, but there was no significant change observed in the knowledge of mothers and caregivers after the nutrition education sessions. So this can be attributed to the current situation they were in at the time of the interview. Remember that this is during the recovery phase of a disaster. Now we ask for the food assistance to their households. So they said that during the SIDS, the foods were provided 3 days after the start of the SIDS, but it increased after several weeks in the evacuation centers. However, those home-based buckwheats or those who stayed with their relatives received minimal to no food packs. Now, during the recovery phase of the SIDS, they were continuously provided with food in temporary shelters, but gradually this decreased. We also asked on the programs or services implemented during the time of the recovery phase, and the responses were this. So there were costs for work activities and seedlings and fertilizers that were distributed to the households. There were also numerous livelihood trainings participated in by the Bakwits. These are trainings like bread and pastry, carpentry, and masonry. However, they also cited challenges or problems related to these trainings that they had uh, participated. They said that they were trained, but no actual work were provided, specifically for carpentry and masonry. They were trained and provided with sewing machines, but there were batches without starter kit and capital for buying fabric. So that is for dressmaking. And no capital given to start the business. Now, specifically looking at the programs and services for infants and young children, they said, or the respondents said, that there was lack of food assistance both during the SIDS and the recovery phase of the SIDS. Although we know that there are some foundations, some groups who distributed food for the children during this period. But these respondents that we have interviewed had these opinions. They said that food for children was not a priority because of no budget, and food for the household, meaning for the whole household, is the priority. Also, they were either home-based evacuee and they are new to the evacuation area, and the area for distribution of foods was far, so they were not able to secure it. And last, they were not informed. So we asked them on their experiences on coping during the SIDS. We found out that parents were the most affected and that had less food intake compared with the other household members. They said that during the SIDS, but this is what we found out, 6 out of 10 households skipped meals. 8 out of 10 eliminated commonly consumed food in their meals like fruits and desserts. 7 out of 10 households had substitutes for their commonly consumed food like fried fish or meat to vegetable, fresh food to canned goods. And 9 out of 10 households reported that they borrowed money from their relatives after the SIDS. So having said that, we have these conclusions and recommendations. Complementary feeding with longer duration can contribute in the improvement of nutritional status of infants and young children aged 66 to 35 months old during the recovery phase of a disaster. What we mean here is that it should not end after 120 days. It should continue. And young children's need for appropriate complementary food should be given priority and considered in times of a disaster. Because we have seen in this research that there was lack, or there were respondents who in fact said that there were no food specifically for the children. Complementary foods in the feeding may be included in the food pack in times of disaster. So you can see in this photo the complementary foods that are produced in the region in the Mindanao area. There is also a need to a comprehensive mapping of affected households, which include home-based households or those who stayed with relatives in nearby areas. So this can also be applicable in other disaster situations. And lastly, the local government unit should continue to support and design the programs which can utilize the skills gained in the training. So the next slide shows that more than doing the research, we also help the people of Marawi. So we try to have a culminating activity in the area, in our research area, at the end of the intervention. So this was attended by children, participants, their mothers and caregivers, the parent leaders who implemented the intervention, the LGU officials of Lanao del Sur, and the LGU Marawi City and the DOST officials. So our Undersecretary for Regional Operations delivered an inspirational message to the participants of Labang Marawi, where we awarded children with highest gain weight in its areas. Parent leaders were also recognized for their participation during the implementation of the project in the temporary shelters. So with that, I would like to thank you, everyone out there, for listening, and I would like to acknowledge the assistance of the DOST GIA and the monitoring of the PSURE DOST, and of course, to my project team members in the Nutrition Intervention Evaluation Policy section of NAMD, the Dost-Fnri. Maraming salamat po.
So, after hearing the presentations from our three resource speakers, we will now start the open forum. So, since we can only accommodate several questions for this technical session, questions which will not be answered during this live broadcast will be sent to the concerned speaker and will be answered offline or via email. So, to begin the open forum, the first question is directed to Ms. Julia Gubat. So the question is from Ms. Eva Benaventura, and she would like to inquire about what are your thoughts about the study reliability in representing Filipino adults in the whole Philippine archipelago, where sampling was done only within one specific location.
Okay, thank you for that question, Miss Ava. Yeah, indeed, we recognize that this study's population was limited in one area, that's only in Taguig. And yeah, I wouldn't say that it represents a Filipino population because the sampling was not intended for such design.
So the next question is
Maganda rin makita namin yung question.
for Miss Julia again by Miss Welisa Camayo. So for the first, did you consider the intake of traditional fermented food products? Also, moreover, there are other regions that include fermented products in their diet, which may affect the overall gut microbiota profile of an individual. Maybe you can consider that since your studies on Filipino adults.
Yeah, I think it's related to the previous question, no? Indeed, there are different diet patterns or habits that can be observed in different parts of the country. It would be interesting to conduct gut microbiota profiling of different population groups in the country with unique dietary patterns or dietary habits, and we hope some would be able to do this, the sampling of population from different parts of the country. And our challenge for this kind of study actually is the requirement, the financial requirement for the sequencing of the gut microbiota profile of the two samples, because per sample it would require a big amount. So we hope that that's why, although we wanted to do this in a bigger population group, at present we are limited by logistics as well as the financial requirements. So yes, that would be interesting to see how the dietary patterns of those who are consuming fermented products habitually than those who do not. So that's well taken. That suggestion is well taken po.
So sorry. So the next question is addressed to Mr. Tan by Sheila Mantaring. So Mr. Tan, what constitutes a moderate physical activity? How about a vigorous physical activity? How are they defined?
In the context of older Filipinos, moderate physical activity is like activities brisk walking, jogging. It can be classified as moderate. Meanwhile, for the vigorous resistance training, such as the bench press and all those, the leg lift, those can be classified as rigorous in the context of older person. So basically, usually the resistance training or vigorous activity are the one being used in interventions, especially in the international context. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. So the next question is for Miss JD. It is asked by Dr. Cecilia Acoin. So, Miss JD, how can this type of intervention be conducted within a COVID context? There is currently restricted mobility, fragmented supply chain, and quarantined staff and households.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that question. So we conducted the Tabang Marawi through the community workers. So in this time of pandemic, maybe it can be done by distribution of the complementary foods to the areas. So, and that is through the households. So we cannot do the center-based strategy that we have done in our previous interventions regarding complementary foods. However, it can be done by distribution of the complementary foods to the LGUs.
Okay, thank you, Miss
Thank
JD. So the next question is addressed to Mr. Tan by Ayoli May Katane. So she noticed that the exercises have squats. Do you recommend this type of exercise for elderly with knee or joint problems like arthritis?
Based on my presentation, when we conducted the pilot testing, all the participants underwent a screening by the geriatrician, and one of which is we check on the health overall health capacity of the older person. We consider if they have fracture, arthritis, joint pain. So usually it's best to consult the geriatrician before performing such exercises. However, it is important to know that older person should have a physical activity regardless of the situation. It's very difficult for older person to gain muscle mass. In a study conducted by the group of Luc Van Loon, the muscle mass for them to gain around 1 to 2 kilos, it can take around 3 months to 6 months. And for a bedridden older person, they can lose 1.4 kilos in just a matter of a week or two. So it's very important to encourage them to perform and move, considering their health situation, but should be under the doctor's supervision.
Thank you very much, Robbie. So another question for Miss JD. So for the Project Marawi, what were the activities for capacity building again?
So, can I share that we have an ongoing project, the Malnutrition Reduction Program, where we are using a strategy of this complementary feeding and nutrition education. So part of that is the capacity building, where we have a developed nutrition module. So this is a 2-day training. I have said the scope of the training is on the how the community workers will implement the intervention in their localities. And the second part is the nutrition modules, which included basic nutrition, complementary feeding, breastfeeding, safe food handling, menu planning, and safe pregnancy, and backyard gardening. So those are the topics that are discussed during the capacity building. So that's the component of capacity building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question for Ms. Robbie Tan. So there are a lot of inquiries that the models used in the physical activity exercises were young people. So what are the models used in the actual physical activity guide?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Sorry. Please clarify if the models used in the physical activity guide are older persons indeed.
Yes, they're older persons, at least the age of 50 and 60.
Okay, thank you. So another question is, where will they be able to download the material, Mr. Tan?
The material is not yet available, though we're finalizing. We will also conduct feasibility and intervention study using this, and also we're planning to measure the energy expenditure performed in these exercises. So hopefully we can release it by batch, by information. So far we have the recommended exercises.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tan. So, the next question is for Miss Julia Gubat. So, there are several suggestions presented by Miss Cecil Lea Bayaga. So, here are some suggestions for the first presentation to enhance discussion of the results. So, number one is identify from the FFQ which are prebiotic sources and correlate this with the microbiota profiles obtained. Second is stress is a great modifier of the gut microbiota. A questionnaire on this aspect would have been helpful. And third is SCFA is a proxy indicator of the activity of the microbiota. If samples have been preserved, then this can be done. So can you please comment on these suggestions, Ms. Gubat?
Thank you, Ma'am Cecil, for those valuable suggestions. Yes, for the first question or suggestion po, yes, we are considering on lifting the food items that are potentially probiotic intake prebiotics from the FFQ data of the study participants. For this presentation, we only considered energy and macronutrient intake as well as dietary fiber. But indeed, we could do that. Thank you for that. For the second suggestion, it was unfortunately we were not able to include assessment of on stress among the study participants, but that could be an interesting field of investigation in the coming years. On the third note, on the SCFA analysis, we would have to look into that if we still have sufficient funds to conduct the SCFA analysis. But that's a very good suggestion po, and we acknowledge that to further improve our gut microbiota studies. Thank you po.
Thank you, Miss Julia. So the next question is for Miss Dorado by Miss Eva Benaventura. So what government agencies can intervene to prevent wasteful disposal of surplus vegetables in the Cordillera region or northern Luzon? Agencies could have instead commissioned the farmers to buy their surplus farm products and process those to be given as supplementary foods to conflicted areas.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the question. I think the best agency would be the Department of Agriculture. However, at this time, there is this enhanced poverty, anti-poverty and hunger program, which is aimed at empowering these farmers. So I think they will be able to help later on in the issue that you have brought up. However, yun nga, it will be the Department of Agriculture and maybe the DSWD. And if there is rice and mungo that are in surplus, then the complementary processing or production facilities in the region can be the taker of these commodities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. JD. So the next question is for Mr. Tan. Is gardening with activities like repotting, planting, plotting, are sufficient physical activities for parents or those who are 70 years old and above?
Yes. Such activities like gardening, walking, doing household chores, those are helpful for older persons, especially for 70 years old and above, especially if they have a limited mobility or conditions such as under bones. But I would like to stress on that concept that doing household chores or daily tasks is very important for older person. Aside from doing the physical activity, it is important to see them perform daily tasks as well. So basically, when you do exercise and you can perform your daily tasks such as those, it's a good indicator for an older person in terms of their functionality. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Tan. Another question for Mr. Tan again do you have measure or evaluation of effectiveness of the physical activity guide for elderly, and do you recommend the set of exercises in the guide to be done by the elderly on their own?
Um, as of now, we haven't conducted the effectiveness study, but we are planning to conduct it together with a nutrition intervention um, as soon as we can. Thank you.
So another question for Ms. Dorado. What other interview questions were included for the participants aside from their demographics and food security situation?
We asked them on the well we have in the objective the programs and the programs and services that are available in the Marawi, and also the coping of the households. And we specifically asked them on foods that are given or distributed for the children during the seeds and during the recovery phase of the seeds. So those were we gathered through key informant interviews and focus group discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. JD. Another question by Ms. Albano is that have you determined what elements or vitamins become significantly deficient among the buckwheats, especially the children?
Vitamin A and iron are the vitamins that are, I mean, the micronutrients that are deficient in them. So if you can recall, in my presentation, the iron intake did not increase at the end of the intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. JD. The next question is directed to Ms. Gubat. What are the effects of what are the effects of drinks with probiotics to the microbiota of the gut among children?
For this particular study, we did not look into that po. But there is a lot of studies available in the literature citing beneficial effects of probiotic drinks on cultivating what we call beneficial kind of bacteria. I cannot really answer po that question based on our current data, but I would suggest that an extensive or at least a reading of the available data, the literature would really answer your question po, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Julia. Another question from Dr. Gina Pedro. So, first question is how does microbiota influence body composition? And the second is the gut microbiota related to stunting in children and how?
Okay. There is evidence in the literature in the literature po, ma'am, citing the relationship of nutritional status and gut microbiota. In our recent paper on children, Filipino children po, it would be good kasi to use the local data. In our recent paper on children, we have seen that diet and nutritional status has a association on the gut microbiota. But in our data, we have seen that there is a gradient for transitions in the diet, there is also an apparent transition in the gut microbiota. So we really did not see a very clear-cut correlation, but indeed we have seen an association of the gut microbiota with nutritional status and diet. We did not look into the effect on stunting. We look only on the two groups. We look only among two groups of children, that is the normal weight and overweight children. But a paper on Italian children and Burkina Faso children have looked into that po, ma'am. And it would be my pleasure to discuss this with you and share with you the paper, ma'am.
Thank you, Miss Julia. So, a question from our YouTube viewer. So, this is also directed to Miss Julia. So, does high fat and or high simple sugar diet reduce gut microbiota? And does this diet promote localized gut inflammation?
Yeah. The thing with gut microbiota research is that we are only beginning to understand talaga the role of specific nutrients or food components of the gut microbiota. There are studies showing that there is a harmful effect of these simple sugars on the gut microbiota because they promote the bacterial species among phyla that are not very good for health. But there are also studies showing that they don't have that particular effect. So there is a variability in the evidence at the present, that it would be good, as we have indicated early on, it would be good to really see this potential associations in the Filipino population, as pointed out earlier, with different dietary patterns and different habits in the Philippines.
Thank you, Miss Julia. The next question is directed to Mr. Tan. So, how about those older person with low calcium? What exercise do you recommend?
Thank you for the question. Um, the context of low calcium, is it osteoporosis? I assume. So if you have for osteoporosis, it is recommended to perform physical activities such as resistance training and also movements on the joints, especially for older person. However, it should be under supervision again, especially on these delicate cases. If they have fracture and the likes. So it's more of a rehabilitation, I think. Aside from exercise, I think nutrition should also play a role on this case for the osteoporosis. I think resistance training in general.
Thank you. So another question for Mr. Tan. What about for elderly who have dementia or Alzheimer's disease? How can you encourage them to do physical activity? What exercises can be done?
That's a very interesting question. Based on studies, physical activity and presence of dementia or memory problem are highly linked. So it's like a chicken and egg concept. So they're still looking on the effect of exercises. Most studies, they were able to see the effect of exercise in the cognition of older people who are pre-demented, meaning they don't still have the dementia. They were able to check the performance of their cognition. So if there's dementia already existing, it's a very complex situation, and doing exercise is important for muscle. However, for the dementia per se, I think I have to look on literatures. This is still a big question. Thank you.
Yes po, ma'am. We welcome collaboration with potential partners. We had a collaboration with Leiden University in the Netherlands because they are providing us with support on data analysis, and your offer for collaboration would be much welcome, and it will be and it will be good to discuss this with our director, Dr. Mario Capansana.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Julia. Another question is that is the gut microbiota part of the nutritional genomics program roadmap of FNRI?
Yes, it is part of the nutritional genomics program. Recently, the nutrigenomics group had a meeting, a roundtable discussion on the roadmap for the nutrigenomics platform, and it is integrated in their roadmap.
Thank you, Miss Julia. The next question is from Miss Desiree Daniega for Miss Julia again. So, nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics have a lot of promise for precision and individual clinical nutrition therapy or management. With our pace in the Philippines, where are we now, and how long will be the approximate time for Filipinos to have specific benefits?
Hi, Doc Des. I think my answer came earlier before that question, because that's the answer, ma'am. It would be good to see more nutrigenomics programs and nutrigenomics projects in the coming years. And I'm happy to let you know that the nutrigenomics program the nutrigenomics section is crafting a very good program to integrate the gut microbiota. And I hope that this will be felt soon by the public.
So the next question is again directed to Miss Julia. So how can Filipinos improve their gut microbiota? What are the available cheap prebiotics in our local market?
Okay, so a lot of studies have already shown that good dietary habits have beneficial effects on the gut microbiota. I think it's one of the misconceptions that intake of probiotics are the only way to improve your gut health, but actually it's a consumption of good habits. So we have a pinggang Pinoy for one, consumption of more fruits and more vegetables, and also exercise can actually improve your gut health. So we do not recommend local or any brand that would improve your gut health, but rather we would say that eating a healthy diet would yield good results in enhancing or improving gut health. So that is also backed up by scientific evidence as published in several journals.
Thank you, Miss Julia. So the next question is for Miss Dorado. So what is the percentage result of the improved 6 to 35 months old during the 120 days complementary feeding?
Wow, I cannot recall. But anyway, it's around, I have to check. It's in my table, but I have to go back. So I'm sorry. We'll just respond later. Or somebody from my project team will respond to you. Is it in the chat? Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So Ms. GD will clarify that question later on. So for another question for Ms. Julia is that, is it safe to say that prebiotic and probiotic foods can be part of the Filipino diet?
Sorry, can you please repeat the
So,
question?
sorry. So the question is it safe to say that prebiotic and probiotic foods can be part of the Filipino diet?
Okay, at the moment, I cannot safely say or recommend the integration of probiotics as part of the Filipino diet. We need scientific evidence to back that recommendation. But based on the literature, you can actually check if it would be good for you to consume probiotics as part of your diet, because there is also a lot of evidence backing up the beneficial effects of probiotics for healthier gut microbiota.
So thank you, Miss Julia. So another question by Dr. Cecilia Cuin is that how much day-to-day variability in gut microbiota would be expected from dietary influence?
Thank you, Doc Ses, for that question. Different studies show different results. Some short-term interventions have already shown changes in the gut microbial composition after 2 days of intervention. Others have shown effects after a week of dietary intervention, but and one study have shown much longer time. After a month, they have seen effect on the gut microbiota. So it really there's really a lot of variations in the data as to the effect of dietary interventions on the gut microbiota of study participants.
So thank you very much, Miss Julia. So there are still a lot more questions, and that will be addressed via email by the different authors or presenters. So thank you very much. So currently we have 830 participants who have attended this session. Now, before we end the session, I would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Miss Julia, to our presenters. So the citation in the certificate of appreciation is for sharing to Ms. Maria Julia G. Gubat for sharing their invaluable time and knowledge as presenter of the paper titled Gut Microbiota Profile of Normal Weight and Overweight Obese Filipino Adults during the 46th FNRI Seminar Series Virtual Edition. Theme is 2020 Perfect Vision for Nutrition, Batang Pinoy Sanatol amidst COVID-19, given this 7th day of July 2020 at the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute. Signed by Ms. Mildred A. Odarbe, Idalia G. Glorioso, and Dr. Mario V. Capansana. So the same citation are also shown in the Certificate of Appreciation for Mr. Robbie Carlo Tan and Ms. Julieta Dorado. So before we end this technical session, so thank you very much to the presenters. I hope that the audience were able to get a lot of information for the first technical session today. So may we remind you that our seminar series will be up to July 10. So stay tuned for more interesting completed researches on food and nutrition. So actually, we have a total of 1,032 participants who also joined us via YouTube. So we will be right back by 2 p.m. for another set of interesting technical sessions. So if you have missed the technical sessions presented today, you may view them. You may watch the replay of the 46 FNRI Seminar Series via the official Facebook page of DOST-Food and Nutrition Research Institute on July 20 to 24, following the same time schedule of the actual FSS. And then the webinar sessions of the 46 FNRI Seminar Series will have a rerun on August 10 to 14, 2020 via DOST FNRI iTrain. Certificate and CPD units will be provided. Also, please do not forget to answer the technical session post-test and accomplish the technical session and overall evaluation forms to receive their certificate. On accomplishing the evaluation form, participants are reminded to complete the data on profession, PRC number, and expiry dates as requirement for CPD units. You can also download your certificate on your 2020 FSS account after accomplishing the overall evaluation form. So with that, thank you very much for participating in technical session 1, and we hope to see you later this afternoon for technical session 2. So thank you very much and good day to everyone.
Pinggang Pinoy. Pinggang Pinoy.
Alam mo na ba na may bagong gabay para sa lakas at kalusugan mo? Simpleng-simple lang at madaling tanda. Ang tawag dito'y Pinggang Pinoy. Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato. Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo. Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo. Ito na ang Pinggang Pinoy. Isang modelong pinggan, sukat na sukat bawat pangkat ng pagkain. Pagkaing balanse sa nakatatanda, mainam din sa bata.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Isda o karne,